Hello, I'm Anthony. Today we're going to have a chat about formants. I'm going to explain what they are. I'm going to show some practical demonstrations of how they can be used when we're writing music. I'm also in particularly deep and booming modes today. I've put the microphone very close to my mouth so that I can get as accurate a reading as possible on the spectrum analyzer. Some of the demonstrations that I'm going to do today will involve me using my voice. The definition of a formant is actually very straightforward indeed. It's a resonant frequency. I'll use the human voice as an example. I'm capable of making pitched tone, not particularly good pitched tone as it happens because I can barely sing, but if I make a pitched tone, ooh, these three peaks at the bottom are the best illustration of the tonal quality of that sound. Ooh, that's reasonably close to a low A, and that was oscillating at about 114 hertz. Low A oscillates at 110 hertz. The second spike up on the spectrum analyzer would have been at around about 220. Let's try and catch it again. Ooh. So it's double the original pitch. I think that time I was oscillating at about 112. Twice 112 is 224. That's the harmonic series of low A. That's pitched tone. Now my body is also contributing to the generation of that sound. I have a throat cavity, I have a chest cavity, I have nasal cavities. All of those air chambers have a resonating frequency. If we assume for the moment that they're all fixed in size, and of course they can change, your chest cavity can enlarge and contract, and that can change the resonating frequency. But if we presume for a moment that they are all fixed in size, they're going to have specific frequencies at which they resonate. That means that any frequencies that are complementary with those resonating chambers are going to sound louder, they're going to be pronounced. And combinations of these different resonances manifest as vowels. That's effectively what a vowel is. A vowel is the manifestation of the free flow of air, the unrestricted free flow of air. That's how we distinguish them from consonants, which are constricted in some way. We close off part of the sound generation passage, generally using our mouth, so that we make a very truncated or plosive sound. So if I make the sound t, see, I've almost completely closed my mouth. Very little air can escape. And so what actually does get out is basically toneless noise. Whereas when I go, ooh, you can feel your chest resonating when you make that sound. I'm kind of in tune with my body. The sound gets louder and it gets richer. Now, as I said earlier, for today's purposes, we're presuming that these resonating chambers in our body are fixed. That means they're always going to accentuate exactly and only those frequencies, and we can see that in the frequency graph. When I make the sound, ooh, you can see particular frequencies are being accentuated. Ooh. If I make a sound at the same pitch, but with a different vowel sound, different peaks and troughs are going to appear because I'm using different resonant capabilities of my body. Some of the resonating chambers are being closed or constricted, others are being opened, and so different sets of frequencies are going to be accentuated. Ooh, E, A, I, U. So they're all at the same pitch. These low tones are always the same. If I hover over the fundamental, A, O, A, O. But up around here, where I'm generating my resonant frequencies, they're changing violently or dramatically as I constrict or open different resonating chambers. Now, here's the fascinating thing about resonating chambers. They work perfectly well with white noise. The human voice box is fabulous for demonstrating white noise and the resonating capacity of your chambers, because that's what happens when we whisper. Hey! I'm throwing out noise, I'm throwing out white noise, but because it's passing through the resonating chambers, certain frequencies are being filtered out, certain resonant frequencies are being accentuated, and you hear a vowel. You hear that flow of air, which manifests as a vowel. A, I, O, U. trying to be as toneless as possible and deliberately not generating any tone. I'm just throwing air out, and by shaping my mouth and stuff that's going on in my body that I'm not even aware of, opera singers are, but I'm not, I'm shaping different vowels. Hey, he, hi, ho, you. And when I reintroduce tone, I get the same resonant chambers plus the pitch that I'm actively trying to generate. Ho, oh. Here's my A. Oh, ho. No tone, no fundamental. Lots of resonating frequency though. Now, all the different vowel sounds that human beings generate can be kind of categorized into different collections of frequencies. Typically, we consider 4 different specific frequencies or a combination thereof to manifest as different vowel sounds. Now, depending upon which country you live in, which area of which country you live in, you're going to learn how to make different vowel sounds with your throat. And there really isn't a single culture that uses all of the different vowel sounds. They're all very subtly different, but they do have common characteristics. And we as human beings can identify those characteristics, and so we can tell what one vowel sounds like over another. You might have noticed that if you listen to a female soprano opera singer, somebody who's so perfectly trained that their voice is only generating the pitched tone that they're asking for, it can actually be very difficult to identify the vowels of the words that they're singing, because all of the frequencies are beyond this set of basic formants that we identify as vowels. So when an opera singer sings really, really high, I won't try to do it, but kind of visualize in your mind somebody singing Kyrie eleison very, very high. It's really difficult to tell, to differentiate the key from the A, from the U. They all basically end up sounding the same. You can identify the sound that they're making, but you can't really hear the individual vowels. So these roadmaps of tones become hugely important, and they're used in music. The reason why we have the Moog sat here is because it's a really great tool for demonstrating different formant frequencies. I've got patched in here a formant module, basically taking a very simple standard synthesizer patch and applying 4 different filters to it. As you can see, mods 1, 2, 3, and 4. And by adjusting the different frequencies of these modulators, we can artificially replicate different vowel sounds. So I'll press a note on the keyboard. That's an A. That's the Moog replicating as closely as it can the letter A. And as you can see in the spectrum analyzer, certain frequencies are being pushed. They correlate to these formant maps. It's like a template of frequencies, and if you push them forwards, it's going to sound like a particular vowel. There's E, I, O, U. Now, it doesn't matter what note I play, those resonant frequencies are always exactly in the same place. Look at this spike here, for instance, at 2600 Hertz. Modulator 4 is generating that pitch. Here it is, 2600 Hertz. It doesn't matter what note I press on the keyboard, that frequency is always being accentuated, and we get that feeling of O. Switch to a U vowel sound, and now around about 1600, there it is, 1600 Hertz, that's manifesting as a U. So all that you're doing when you apply formant processing to a sound is accentuating particular frequencies that correspond to the vowel sounds that we recognize as human beings. We recognize them because everybody generates basically the same set. There are differences. Larger people generate lower formants than smaller people, but they operate in the same frequency range. Let's have a demonstration of that effect. So I've dialed up a phrase here sung by my wife in one of my songs called Springtime. Firstly, I'll play the phrase at natural pitch.
And all this time, under the quiet dark cover of night.
So we can see in the lower register very clear tonal peaks, pretty much up to 1 kilohertz. What you're seeing is largely the tonal impact of Pauline singing specific pitches. Inside those pitches, there are resonant accentuations. Her voice box and her body are contributing to some of those frequencies. But in the upper range, because Pauline has a very high voice, the upper frequencies are much more affected by the formants, by the resonant formants. I'll play the phrase again, and this time I'll start affecting the formant, which basically means I'm shifting those frequency centers. And you'll see in the spectrum analyzer the effect that the formant control is having on the upper frequencies. It has less effect on the lower stuff. It's really in the upper frequency ranges where this formant control is doing the majority of its work.
And all this time, under the quiet dark cover of night.
See these frequencies
And all this
being shifted.
time, under the quiet dark cover of night.
Now, the reason why you get this effect, this is called chipmunking or munchkinization, is because the formant is picking up these frequencies that we identify as vowels, and it's shifting them forwards or backwards. In the case of an increase of formant like this, basically shifting those frequencies forwards. That in turn is making the voice sound smaller. When I pull the formant down, it sounds like a larger person is singing the phrase, and this can be used because when we pitch correct, we naturally shift all of those frequencies as well, and that's where the chipmunking effect comes from. So this time I'm going to raise the pitch by 5 semitones.
And all this time, under the quiet dark cover of night.
So the pitch has worked, the pitch correction has worked. That phrase is now being sung 5 semitones higher, but it sounds unnatural because those formants are in the wrong place. So what we can do to mitigate that effect is to pull the formants back so that those upper frequencies, the ones that are identifying the vowels, get moved back to where they should be, where the resonant chamber should be operating if they've been pitch corrected properly.
And all this time, under the quiet dark cover of night.
And you can tell immediately just by that very small change, she's recovered some of that natural body resonance that we expect to hear. So generally speaking, if you increase the pitch of something, bring the formant in the opposite direction, not necessarily to the same extent, just use your ears to guide how far you need to come, but an opposite adjustment of formant to the direction of the pitch change is going to really help to maintain some kind of natural effect with the vocals. Another thing that you can use formant for is to make harmonies sound like they're sung by different people. So what we have here is a simple harmony phrase. And then I've duplicated that track, added a little altar boy with a slight formant change. So I'm making the voice sound like it's slightly smaller than it actually is. The second version on its own. I've just realised I had them slightly panned as well, but now I'll bring them both in and you'll hear that those two harmonies sit better together now that they're effectively sung by slightly different people than if they'd been identical replications of the same phrase. If I push it a little bit further, go the other way. If you've got 4 or 5 different harmony layers and you just put slightly different formant effects on each of them, then you can really build up quite a thick sounding choir using the same person without having to do any fancy pitch correction. You're making some of their body slightly bigger and some of their body slightly smaller. That's all for today. Hope you found it useful. If you did, please hit like. I'll see you next time. Thanks very much.